మిత్రులారా, బంధువులారా, మిత్రునా, welcome to South Asia Maps. This is an education channel and intellectual Chatriya's channel. లిమిటెడ్ స్పేస్ లో ఫ్లాస్క్ లో బ్యాక్టీరియా పెరుగుతూ ఉంటే ఆర్ భూమండలంలో మానవ జనాభా పెరుగుతూ ఉంటే అంతిమ సమయంలో ఏమి జరుగుతుంది దానిపైన వివరంగా చెబుతాను. The topic of today's discussion in our rice grains on chessboard series. You see the rice grains, this is the chessboard series part 1A. The title of the presentation is Bacterial Growth in the Last Stages, the last minutes. That means if you have an open space such as an island, a planet Earth, filling up that open space like a pond, some weeds growing in a pond, open space is a habitat like bacteria growing in an open space habitat flask or yeast growing a wine vat. And the concept of running out of resources. Exponential growth. And this is your presenter Dr. J. Reddy, J. Tirupati Reddy. In this 01A series, we'll be exploring a topic called bacterial growth in the last minutes, how serious it is. After this presentation, you will comprehend it is a serious issue. And all these presentations, Mitronam, this is the rice grains on chessboard series, exponential growth series, or compounding series. And in the initial stages, I have made round about 20 plus videos or so, 2025 February. You will get a deeper understanding, the thing we generally ignore or do not bother much. Exponential growth, exponential bacterial growth, we covered before in a finite environment flask. Now we take it further, is a finite environment flask. Exponential bacterial growth, what happens in the final stages. All these presentations, Mitronam, I posted around about 700 or so similar related series at South Asia Maps J. Reddy. You can Google. There are around about 750 videos or so. I have partitioned them, organized them into round about 70 are playlists. You can pick and choose the playlist of your choice on varied diverse topics, Indology, human ecology, and so on. Intuitiveness is you can understand the things very easily, naturally. Nobody need to teach you or you need not be taught. Reflecting. If a person is on the 7th or 8th floor building and he slips and falls over, immediately understands a grave injury is going to happen to his body, or even he may lose the life. He need not be told about Newton law or anything like that. This is intuitiveness. Instinctual. Unreflecting. So we will take up this issue in the final stage of the growth of bacteria. What is going to happen? The final stages, the last rounds of bacterial growth in a limited environment. This is sequel to our first presentation. Say we have bacteria in a limited environment, final environment. We talked, it starts its life cycle at 11 o'clock in the late in the night, and bacteria multiplies, doubles at every minute. First minute you have 1 bacteria, next minute you have 2 bacteria, next minute you have 4 bacteria, and so on, 8 bacteria. We assume by 12 o'clock the entire flask is filled. The great event occurs at the last moment, that is the discussion implication of this series. By 12 o'clock, 100% of the flask is filled. If you come and look at the bacteria, 1 minute before 11:59, still the flask is 50% empty. If you come and look at the 58th minute, 11:58, 25% of the flask is occupied. Even 11:57 minutes, only 12.5 percentage occupied. You may think there is a plenty of space, but it is not. That means the great event occurs on the final events, final minutes. Bacterial growth in a limited environment here at a final stage. You have the starting your bacteria growing at 11 o'clock, filling the entire flask at 12 o'clock. At 11:54 minutes, you and look at the bacteria, it is only 1.6% of the flask is filled. Think the entire flask is a resource, empty space, habitat. You think there is so much amount of space. The next minute, 3.1% is filled. By 11:56, 6.3 is filled. 11:57, that is just 3 minutes before it is going to be completely filled. It has only 12.5%. So here 6.3 we just adjusted 12.5. So that is the next minute 25%, next minute 50, 100%. That means you come and look into the bacterial growth at 11:58 minutes. That is just 2 minutes, 25% is full, 75% volume is still resourceful. That is the habitat plenty. You think there is a plenty to grow. That is not. That is the entire concept of understanding this important concept. Exponential growth is nothing but compounding. It is a graph here, you're growing something, it is small rate that can be 0.1% or 1%, 10% like a compounding interest. Credit card interest is around about 20% or so. Anything that grows at a constant rate. If it's like 18% growth, the issue will be escalating very short time. If it's a 1% growth, it will escalate at certain stage with the same immense level, but it may take more time. The concept. Exponential growth in a finite environment. Humans lack intuitiveness, or they are very poor to understand the grasp the implications of exponential growth. That is nothing but compounding. Professor Alan BartLett, professor at emeritus professor used to be, and Colorado State University, Boulder foothills of Great Rocky Mountains in North America, used to say the greatest shortcoming of human race is our inability to understand the exponential growth, that is the compounding growth. I have put the same thing in a different perspective. Let's say this is the entire space. You start growing the bacteria when it is 11 p.m. in the late night. You are in 12 p.m. By 12 p.m. entire flask of bacteria is filled. Bacteria multiplying at a constant rate. Bacteria doubles every minute. You come and saw, let's say the bacteria at, you put bacteria here at 11 o'clock, 11:54 minutes. Only 1.6% of the space is occupied. You think it's a very big space is present, lot of space is present, nothing to worry. You come at 11 o'clock 55 minutes, around about 3.1% of space is occupied. You come and see into the bacterial flask at 11:56, 6.3% space is occupied. And you come and see at 11:57 p.m. only 12.5% of the flask is occupied. That means still there is so much of the space you think is present. At the next minute, 11:58, 25% of the space is occupied. Still, you think 75% of the space or resource or habitat is present, available to grow. 11:59, you come and see 25 becomes doubles because 1 minute, doubling every 1 minute. 50% of the space is occupied. You get perturbed and come and see at 12 o'clock midnight. 100% of the space is occupied. What is happening means this bacterial growth is escalating in the last minutes that we generally lack the intuitiveness to understand the concept. Filling the open space or running out of resources, exponential growth. How does this bacterial growth in a flask relate to our day-to-day the lives of socio-political economic situations niches? Take for examples, this entire oil is 100 units or 100 space. Let's say oil discoveries were made and around about 1850s or so. Round about 2010, half of the 2010 AD or 200 AD 2000 AD, half of the oil in the planet Earth is consumed. Round about 150 years or so it took. Next 20-30 years, entire remaining 50% of the oil will be consumed by the mankind because every day we are consuming round about 90 million barrels a day. If you round it up, 100 million barrels a day, and million means 6 zeros, that is 0.1 billion barrels a day. If you make round about 10 months or 12 months or so, the enormous oil consumption on the planet Earth every day, that means 3 billion, 30 billion barrels of oil day we are consuming every year. If there are 1,000 barrels, billion barrels, PBLs on the planet Earth, in the 30 years we will be consuming. That's what it will be. The seriousness starts in the final stages. And how do we intuitively think about that? If you look at that, if you say this is the rice grains on a chessboard, there are 64 squares on the chessboard. We are in the 64 here. By 54 or so 55, entire global harvest of the rice grains we can put so far on the entire board at that place. That means if you want to fill the next 10 or so squares, you have to harvest that grain for next 675 years. That means now if you take the global rice harvest of 2024 AD, there are around about 532 million tons of the rice is harvested. You think the chessboard is a small problem and you fill the entire board when you are in 54 the square in the 4, but by the time you want to fill the entire chessboard 64 squares, you have to harvest the grains in the next 675 years. Why that enormous thing happens? That is the thing we are discussing today. That is the event escalates at the last 2 minutes. Oil consumption, the coal consumption, the GDP growth, the fiat money creation, and you are going to build the highways, the tarring the roads and everything. Every certain stage you are going to double it, and double it. In the final stage, the resource consumption will be very serious and enormous. Same as bacterial growth, what is happening in the last few finite minutes. Take for example, here I have discussed elsewhere human population. Before agriculture was started around about 8,000 BC, that means 8,000 years before, 2000 means 10,000 years back. There are around about 8 million people estimated. It's not serious whether it's 8 or 10, does not matter. 8000 BC, 8 million people, Homo sapiens, existed on the planet Earth. By 2023-24, there are 8,000 million. From 8 to 8,000 million people are present on the planet Earth. This is the serious issue. Because at that time there is a simple living, consuming the less resources, energy. Now the people have become Homo Colossus, means giant resource consumers, enormous amount of energy, automobiles consuming the many things. 8 becomes 16, then becomes 32, 64, 125, 250. This population doubling and resource consumption I discussed in other place, human ecology. Look at it. Same as if you take a post-partition Bharat, post-Radcliffe line, 1947 Bharat was partitioned, and let's say at the time how many people lived in India, post-partition India. There are around about 350, 360 days. If you round up, assume that is the population, 350 million. When Indira was assassinated around about 1984, population doubled, 700 million. 2024, the population is 1400 million. In a short span, the population doubling, 350, 700, 1400, is the same thing. That means at the time we need to produce less amount of food, fiber, fodder. People didn't consume many consumables like two-wheelers, four-wheelers, and not traveling much. Simple lifestyle. Now everybody trying to become a Homo colossal, giant resource consumer, and so the problem is escalating. That's what you have to look the things in a broader perspective. That's the concept of exponential growth, a constant growth. We discussed bacterial growth and escalation in the last few minutes, filling up the open space, running out of the resources, bacteria running out of the resources, or the yeast growing in a wine vat will be running of the resources. A wine vat where the place that you can inoculate the yeast in a sugar containing drum called vat, and within 1 minute before final doubling, half of the vat is full of resources, but the yeast will know the next doubling, they will consume all the resources. I have discussed the similar ecology related resources. You can look at our YouTube channel, and there are many similar related overlapping issues. You can go and look at them. So that's what I wanted to talk about today, the concept of the running out of the space in the last final minutes in a limited habitat due to exponential growth, compounding. In the next presentations, Mitralara, we look at how we can comprehend very big numbers like the deca, hecta, kilo, mega, giga, tera, peta, exa. These numbers generally we don't use that much, but if you get a good inkling, you can understand this concept of exponential growth, the issues humans facing today on the planet Earth, that is human impasse, human predicament, running out of resources. This is your presenter, Dr. J. Reddy, South Asia Maps Intellectual Chattias channel. Hope this presentation is productive to you. If you want to share your ideas or any comments, you can put in the discussion comments box, or even you can share the resource with others. See you in the next presentation, comprehending the big numbers, Mitrona.